This is O.V. Smith, the Backyard Sportsman. We have an interesting knife in the work block today. This is a homemade knife. It has a Ontario blade, a carbon steel blade, which is very well rusted, and stacked leather guard here, and a horn handle. And what we're going to do is clean up this knife and actually rebuild it. We're going to replace all these elements here. I happen to have a piece of deer horn that about matches actually the profile of this one. And in fact, it came from the same person who gave me, in fact, it came from the same person. In fact, it came from the client whose knife I'm working on, so it's actually associated with him. So what we're going to do is take this knife and rework the blade, put an edge on it, polish it, remove the stacked leather, remove the original grips, and actually remount it in Antler. So that's what we're going to be about. An interesting historic knife made by his late uncle. On these knives where the blade is not quite so rusted, I'm usually able to restore them pretty well using this stainless steel wire brush. And so that's the technique we're going to try. It is cleaning up. What we're going to do here in the grinder is actually grind away this antler until we get down to the tang, so we can find out exactly where it is and what its shape is. Because that's obviously glued into this piece of antler, and then the whole material was epoxied several times to give some stiffness to the guard here. We now have the blade where we can break it away from the handle material and clean it up with a Dremel tool. We'll use the Dremel to get a good bond off all of this. And you know what? We may even be able to save this leather. We now have our components separated. The blade has been cleaned up. We were able to actually remove and clean up the original guard, so we'll be able to replace that and use the same one. Now we have to dress up this face and drill the antler so we'll be able to set the blade in it. We've ground the antler. We have ground the antler, so we now have a fit. We have ground the antler, so we now know the orientation of the antler and the ultimate handle. And so now we have to drill a series of holes to allow for this tang to be inlet and glued. We now have cut the antler and ground it flat, so it'll be parallel to the end of the blade. And now we have to cut a series, and now we have to drill a series of holes to have the tang actually penetrate back in the antler far enough to hold it. Although it took much longer to although it took much longer to do it than to talk about it, we have inlet here so that we can fit the tang actually into the antler about that far. And so we'll attach the trigger, and so we will attach the guard and glue up. I have cleaned up the old trigger guard here and taken most of that glue from it. And what I'm going to do is add a plastic spacer that you see right here, just to help protect the guard and reinforce it a little bit. And so now I'm going to take my drill and drill a hole through the spacer. Now that is done. Now just a few seconds on the flatbed grinder and we'll get this spacer down to size. Now that's starting to look good now. This is an older model Dremel scroll saw, and it takes a 3-inch blade. Now you can't buy the 3-inch blades from Dremel anymore, but Olson still makes them. And the number is 42901. If you need them, they got them. And these were actually sold through Amazon and these were actually sold through Walmart online. So you can order those, although the delivery time was, for some reason or other, nearly 2 weeks. But at any rate, we got the little blades, and they look good. They lock up firmly in the saw, and so we're going to give them a try. And it cuts through very, very nicely. So now we're going to round and polish this, so when you actually hold the knife, you'll be able to. This was just absolutely superfluous for a knife handle. No. Old Dremel did good. Yeah. So the handle would fit well in the grip. I have taken the Scotch-Brite wheel here and smoothed it after having it reduced on the belt sander. So this enables the grip to be held comfortably in the hand. Just to make the grip feel comfortable in the hand, I put this on the belt sander and remove these rough knobbies on this side, and also use the Scotch-Brite wheel here to polish this knob and also to polish this. So now it has a more lustrous finish. We're getting ready for the final edging on the blade. Actually, despite the knife's general rusted appearance, the edge is in good shape. So it's not going to take too much. So I'm going to start with a 220 grit, and I think just a couple of passes will be sufficient to bring up a good edge on this knife. Well, that's pretty good for an edge. The steel is feathering just a little bit, but that's not too bad. Yeah, this knife will cut very, very well. And now we're finally ready for gluing up. I'm going to use this JB Quickwell, usually known as liquid steel or some such thing, and this is a 2-component epoxy. Set the tang in. It's not going to take terrible much, equal amounts of components here. Should be enough. I'm going to clamp this on the vise and put pressure on the top of this handle by hanging some weight on it to keep this downward pressure on the assembly while this epoxy sets. Now I've got about 15 pounds of pressure on that blade by using my loop string here and these two weights. The family blade that the knife that Josh Clifton's uncle built had a 1/4 inch hole here for a tong. So I've already mounted the knife into the vise and into the drill press, and we're going to drill. Okay. Now we've got a pilot hole, and we're going to enlarge it some. I'm going to give him a little larger hole than he actually had. So we're actually going to finish it out with this bit. We now have Mr. Clifton's uncle's knife in better shape than when he made it maybe 15 years ago. But now, this is Hovey Smith, reminding you to hunt what you eat and eat what you hunt. Be legal, be ethical, be safe, goodbye, God bless, and see you next time.